Hello guys, it's Evan again, and today we're going to get down with the final season of Drake and Josh, every episode of Drake and Josh Season 4 reviewed. Well, this has been quite the ride, and we're about to enter a new show, a possible new era, and just a feeling of bliss that we can finally be done with this original quartet of seasons. That is the magic of Little Pete and Casey Jones. So strap in, prepare yourselves. Episode 38, Josh runs into Oprah. For his birthday, Josh gets to meet Oprah Winfrey, but ends up driving into her. This episode, I don't like it, I really don't. Yeah, I'm just going to get straight to it. This is episode. It is a bit sad that this is the first time where the first episode is a bad episode, but oh well, I'm sticking to my guns. Anyway, the problem with this episode is that it just continues another running gag that continued throughout the show, but really got noticeable in the last season. It's not Megan's attitude or the repetitive gag of her getting away with anything. If anything, she barely appears in this episode. But Drake getting away with things scot-free while Josh getting nothing or is punished. To be fair, not exactly like that in this episode. It's more so of Josh getting something he liked only for him to get punished for liking it. Think of post-movie Squidward and you may get what I mean. Besides the running gag, there are many minor things in this episode that bother me. For one, there's this one scene where Josh outright kisses Drake on the lips after he gets the ticket for the show. And I'm not a homophobe, but just the way it's executed is just so cringy. Also, Megan's line afterwards doesn't really make things better. Secondly, when Josh actually runs into Oprah, I'm going to be quite honest, I wish they could have tried to get a better looking actress or one that resembled Oprah more. Lastly, the episode is not that funny. Josh's happiness for Oprah and the sarcasm towards Drake is a little bit funny, but most of the jokes are just Josh getting tortured or, like I said, just getting punished for liking something. And overall, it's just not a good episode at all. Episode 39, Vicious Tiberius. Drake and Josh have to watch over Mrs. Hafer's house, but as while doing so, they encounter her vicious Rottweiler, or dog if you don't know what a Rottweiler is. This episode, it's fantastic. Yep, this is a very good episode. And in a way, this episode is kind of like a cat and mouse plot, or even something similar to old SpongeBob. Yes, I mentioned SpongeBob twice in this episode, shut up. This plot is very simple, but at the same time does give a good reason for things to happen. However, what really sells this episode is the comedy. The comedy is really good, from Drake not knowing what New Jersey is, to Josh letting Drake slam into a door just because he didn't say go. There's a lot to love here. Another thing I like about this episode is the story. You see, even though 95% of this episode is in Mrs. Hafer's house, there's a very subtle subplot that comes along and helps the guys in the end. Walter told them the dad, to pick up Megan from oboe practice, and at the end, Megan just shows up at the place knowing Josh and Drake are there. I don't get why they needed to pick her up when she literally just walked from practice to the house, but oh well. The point I'm trying to make is that this episode has a pretty good story, and overall, it's a really nice episode. It's very funny, has a pretty good story, and has a very good premise, and it's just really fun to watch. Episode 40, The Wedding. Drake and Josh have to go to their grandma's wedding, but they have some serious car troubles. Oh boy, this episode is so boring. Like, it's funny how in the last episode, them being in the same place benefits the episode, but in this one, it's just a serious flaw. Since for most of the episode, Drake and Josh are just walking around in a small little spot in the middle of nowhere, might I add, there's not really much that's going on. Josh is just being witty, and Drake is just being stupid. I mean, there is some good comedy here, such as Drake making fun of this truck driver for his name Leslie, despite the fact that the plot literally could have been solved right there and then had he not made fun of his name. That's another thing, the conflict isn't really resolved. At the end, the car is just lit with flames, really, and there's no reason for it, and I don't know if it's a gas leak or what, but either way, there's no reason explained on why the car should be on fire. And Drake and Josh just walk to the place, I guess. They just get off screen while it bursts into flames. In terms of positives, the first scene was pretty funny, and throughout the episode, it does have some pretty good comedy. It's not the best ever, but at least I'm a little bit entertained. I won't say the entire episode is mundane, because the comedy does keep me entertained a little bit, but it's just so boring. It's episode 41, Mindy loves Josh. Josh and Mindy have some relationship problems once competition gets in the way. I will admit, this is one of the few episodes where my thoughts on it have drastically changed over time. I will admit, I first thought this episode was meh, as I thought it was not that funny, kind of boring, and a bit cliche to be honest. But after a rewatch and just analyzing it on its own, I think this is a really good episode. For one, I do appreciate the fact that Josh and Mindy's chemistry is in the spotlight in this episode. In fact, it's really the first time since playing the field where, it's been in the spotlight, really. And even then, that was a subplot in that episode, but I digress. I just think that these guys are a really good couple. I'm always supportive of this. It's just a shame that couples in the future shows, besides maybe Beck and Jay and Victorious, are really shallow and very underdeveloped, but I'll get to that later. Anyway, back to the episode. In terms of comedy, it's decent. It's not one of the funniest episodes, but I did get a good amount of laughs in. The only real standout joke is the running gag with the lasers in the wall, and the janitor getting frustrated with cleaning it up. I think the story is the main focus of the episode, which is not really a bad thing, as long as the story is good. Well, the story is really good. Everything seems to be pretty nicely paced, and none of the characters seem out of order, so there's nothing really wrong here. However, this episode isn't perfect, as it is a little bit boring during the middle, and the episode is a little bit forgettable, but overall, it's still a good episode. Episode 42. Who's got game? Drake and Josh make a bet on who can get the most girls by the end of the week. Yeah, you can already tell that this is a bit similar to the bet from season 2. Not a bad thing since I love that episode. I wouldn't say this is a ripoff. Trust me guys, there are going to be a lot of ripoffs and hack writing and Dan's later work. Oh, I can't wait. Heck, most ripoffs come from this show, but one step at a time now. But anyway, while I don't think this episode is as good as the bet, I still find this episode to be pretty good. Firstly, I gotta admit that this episode is one of the few, or this may be another episode, first being We're Married and second being Now, where Drake's girl issue is actually a bit relatable and not just a shallow, he's so cute scenario. In fact, this may be one of my favorite episodes when it comes down to Drake. He's not downright idiotic or kind of malicious occasionally. He's very charming, he has a little bit of idiocy, but he's not really his standout traits. And he seems genuine about his feelings towards a girl, and I like it. Meanwhile, I love how Josh tries so hard in the episode, or in the beginning with this one girl, that's basically both lactose intolerant and vegetarian, which kind of shows because she's a little bit skinny, but I digress. Overall, this episode is pretty good story-wise, and also pretty decent comedy-wise. This episode is really good all around, and yeah, there's not much to say about it. Episode 43, The Great Doheny. Josh gets to meet one of his favorite magicians, Henry Doheny. However, at the end, something goes wrong with the magic trick, and he kills him. Quote unquote, kills him. Oh boy, this episode it's just stupid. I don't know how else to put it. It's just so bad. It's just so confusing too, but not in a funny way. I just don't understand it. Well, to be fair, the first half of it is pretty decent. Nothing too special, but it's cool for Josh to meet one of his idols. I mean, it's been known since the last season that Josh liked magic, so it fits. However, it's the actual magic show itself that makes this episode fall apart terribly. First of all, Megan, of course, tells Mr. Doheny about a really cool trick, so he pulls it off in the show. So apparently this trick was supposed to fool someone into thinking that by sticking a sword into a box, instead of it not hurting, it actually kills them. But in the end, it didn't kill him. Like, you see where I'm getting at? I mean, this would be stupid already, but if it were just at the show and then afterwards Doheny reveals it was just a prank, then that's fine. But this carries on with a freaking funeral. That's where it gets really, really confusing. In the quote-unquote funeral, Doheny just pops in midair, and it's not really funny. He just pops in with some smoke, and, like, if he came out some curtains or something, it would be kind of clever, but I don't expect 100% realism in these shows, but I don't mind wacky elements, but if you're going to do that, then don't be stupid with it. Another thing I don't like about this episode is that, honestly, it's kind of repetitive. Before the magic show, the guy does crash into their house, and the usual have an annoying person crash in your house gag pitch in, and it's so lame. Some of it is funny, I guess, and the first half, like I said, is alright, but this is not a very good episode comedy-wise, and especially story-wise. Overall, yeah, this episode really sucks. I don't think it's the worst thing out there, but it's just so bad. It's so confusing. I hate it. Yeah, it's a bad episode. Episode 44. I Love Lucy. I Love Sushi. Drake and Josh have to work at a sushi place in order to get their furniture back. Yeah, even before looking at the trivia section of this episode on the Drake and Josh wiki, I knew on the go that this has a really, really big problem. This episode is an admittedly shameful recycle of Attack of the Bugman from Kenan and Kel. I will admit that We're Married and Poem Sweet Poem were kind of similar, but were very different. Here, this is a clear ripoff of Attack of the Bugman. And to be perfectly honest, I prefer the other episode much more, and that's saying much since the first half of the episode was really dumb and unfunny. It got better in the second half, but even still, the episode just started off really bad and really samey. Obviously, the plot recycling will bring this episode down. I mean, sure, there are obvious differences like Walter and Audrey being out due to the wedding anniversary, while Roger, Cheryl, and Kyra being out due to Kyra getting straight A's. Also, Drake and Josh have to actually work so they can get their stuff back, while Keenan and Kel just contact the police but have to stall their parents and Kyra for them to come back. You get to see the episode to get what I mean, but anyway, besides the plot recycling, unfortunately, I don't really like anything else in this episode, to be honest. To be fair, it's not really offensive or anything. It's not too stupid like the last episode, but it's not incredibly funny like Vicious Tiberius. There's just not enough for me to be invested. I will say that the episode isn't outright terrible. In fact, I don't even think it's really that bad. But overall, I'll be nice and just say it's a meh episode, but it's not that far off from Batty McFaddy. Episode 45, The Storm. Drake and Drake then, has some people caved in his house, or their house. I'll get to that later. As there's a huge rainstorm in the area. So one thing that's very, very noticeable about this episode is that Josh only appears in the beginning of the episode, and afterwards he doesn't appear again. Yes, he is mentioned many times since, he's one of the main protagonists, but not gonna lie, it really, really brings down this episode. Not only out of the duo do I like Josh more, but there's not really a point to him not being there. He's just not there. I don't know why is he not there. Did Josh Peck get sick? Anyway, not only that, but I feel like Josh would have saved an otherwise meh episode. I don't have much to say about this episode, to be honest. I feel there are good things within this episode, like the "We Will Rock You" or "Let's Get This Party Started" rendition at the end. And also there are some good jokes like Crazy Steve watching Dora the Explorer. That was pretty funny. It's just, it has the same problem with the wedding, where since everybody's in the same setting, there's not that much that happens other than rain and lighting effects. It's funny because I think the wedding is funnier than this, but at the same time, there's a little bit more going on, so I don't know. Overall, yeah, this episode's pretty meh. It's not good, but it's not bad. Episode 46, My Dinner with Bobo. Drake and Josh have to save an orangutan from being eaten by a doctor. I'm not even joking. Alright, so let's just get this out of the way. An orangutan is an ape, not a monkey. Doesn't bother me now, but my god, it bothered me every time someone called a gorilla or a chimp or whatever a monkey. Guys, if it doesn't have a tail, then it's not a monkey. It's just an ape. Now shut up. Another thing, and this is minor, but the way Drake, Josh, and Megan come across Bobo in the first place is there. I'm guessing that Bobo appears in the Stan the Carman commercials along Stan himself, but it's not really clear. Other than that, I don't have much to say about this episode, really. In terms of jokes, I really like the ending where the three are in a goofy, girly car. I like the Bluetooth joke. I like how Helen is fine with Drake setting up the Bobo booth, but she hates it when Josh is behind it. It's probably one of the only instances where Helen's love for Drake is actually a little bit funny. To be fair, it was a little bit funny too. A movie job, heck, that's why it's a good episode, but it's not one of my higher good episodes. So, and also Megan's not that annoying. It is a bit irritating that in most episodes I have to make sure that she isn't annoying, and unfortunately, this is basically a tradition that's going to continue with the next shows. But I digress. What I really like about this episode is just the tone of it, really. Yeah, it's funny just seeing a little ape crawling around and interacting with the surroundings. It's just so cute. At least it's really cute to me. And it really brings up this episode, honestly. It's just a touching episode. It just kind of pulls on the heartstrings a bit. And overall, this is a pretty good episode. And a very touching one, at least for me personally. Episode 47, Treehouse. Drake and Josh are stuck in a treehouse. That's it. Okay, yes, they basically blew up this one kid's treehouse with a rocket, but for most of the episode, they're just stuck in a treehouse trying to get out. This is a pretty good episode. This is another episode of Season 4 where it seems a bit lacking in the setting. Yes, another one. And unfortunately, kind of like the wedding and the storm, it's a big flaw. The treehouse isn't really aesthetically interesting, just wood with one shade of brown, which is a bit basic, but it's not a big deal. And just like other episodes, it's not really the plot itself that makes the episode really good, even though I do like how the episode progresses overall. It's a decent comedy that really sells it. Drake keeps saying con instead of cone, and Josh getting attacked by a squirrel. He had no problem tying a note on the squirrel's tail when, he was afraid of squirrels, but okay then. I will admit another thing that brings it down is Megan. Again, she's not really unbearable like the last season. She doesn't really prank anybody. But, I don't know, it just seems really arrogant in this episode. But even still, I still think this is a pretty good episode. Not fantastic, not amazing. Heck, it's not even that far from meh. But even still, I like this episode. Episode 48, Josh is done. Josh is finally done with Drake being careless and now doesn't want to talk to him. Heck, is that brutal to the point that Josh only refers to him as a roommate and not even a brother? So this episode is just, I gotta say, this episode is, it's just, I feel that I should go through the episode itself and not just analyze it as a whole off the bat. Okay, so in the beginning, Drake and Josh play ping pong when they should be studying for this chemistry exam they have the next day. The next day, Drake leaves the house before Josh can get a ride to make out with his girlfriend, and that makes Josh understandably frustrated. So I will admit that the beginning is pretty decent. It's not remarkable, admittedly, but it's a good way for the episode to get started. Also, I like the smash the window transparency joke that Drake said. Anyway, after school, Drake apologizes to Josh, but Josh tells him that he's officially done with Drake. Drake is confused on why Josh is done with him, but he soon goes through the episode realizing that his life is much better without him. Now this is where I take pause. Why would Drake's life suddenly be miserable, but Josh's life is awesome? Oh yes, because we see that Drake relies on Josh way too much. For example, there's this one subtle case of irony that I didn't realize until a couple months ago, where Drake says he got $10 to get out of the house unaware that movie tickets were $11. I hate to ruin the joke, but basically means that Josh, working at the premiere hall, basically gave Drake those tickets each time. Through most of the episode, it does paint the picture that Drake does need Josh in his life, and it does pretty well. Even looking back at it, I start realizing that Josh did help Drake get some girls too, and he helped him go on a date with this one smoking hot chick in driver's license, helped him on trivia and Smart Girl, got him to unintentionally go on a date with a foreign girl and we're married, etc. So there's a reason that Drake is kind of alone here, despite the fact that he had a girlfriend earlier in this episode, but it's a minor thing. Alright, so here we get to, I'm not sure if this is the rising action or the climax to be honest, since the ending scene is right afterwards, but in the scene at school, a couple things go down. Firstly, the teacher decides not to lower Josh's grade since he got every question right or something like that. The class has to do this lab, and of course, Josh being fed up with Drake, he switched lab partners. Drake has to work with this kid who mumbles too much, but eventually gets a ton of chemicals onto his hands. So I guess in a way this is payback for getting Josh in a chemical bath in an earlier episode, but I digress. So Drake gets one of those safety showers and then he snaps. Right here is where, fine, I'll spoil it. Right here is when I officially call this not only a good episode, but to be honest, this is an exceptionally written episode. This scene has, without a doubt, more emotion than anything before, and definitely anything after. Okay, this is one scene in iCarly Season 2 and one episode, but I'll get to that later. So Drake admits that his life is much worse without Josh, and just the acting, the fact that there's no laugh track, the overall tone, the climactic feeling of it all is just, it's such a powerful scene. A very good scene. Just, it's nearly perfect. Yes, without this scene, this episode was really good anyway because overall the comedy is really good. The story is overall pretty nice, but this scene right here, wow. And then at the end, Drake and Josh make up and they play ping pong. Well, this is the full package. This episode is very strong comedy wise, very strong story wise, has very good pacing. There's honestly nothing wrong with it. Okay, I don't believe any episode of the TV show is perfect, but I can't really point out anything that is bizarre or just really stupid. It's amazing. Yes, this is not just a good episode, but a phenomenal episode. Episode 49. Eric punches Drake. Drake gets made fun of after Eric hits him in the face. You know, I will admit this is another good episode, but it's just the same level as some of those good episodes from season 3. Again, those are good episodes, so there's nothing wrong with that, but you know, there's nothing that really stands out, and there's nothing that really sticks out compared to anything else. I mean, yeah, I know this episode is kind of basic, but honestly, I don't have much to say about it. It really sucks because I get guilty over having less than stellar reviews, but oh well, when an episode's good, it's just good. There's nothing really to talk about. This episode is pretty harmless. There's nothing really good about it that much, to be honest, but nothing really bad about it. I think the comedy is, like basically every other episode, pretty decent. I do like Drake confusing Eric being a pacifist with him being Jewish. That was pretty funny, but besides from that, the comedy is not really that memorable, to be honest. Uh, I'm actually struggling to think of what to say about this episode. Really, it's just a good episode. Episode 50, Megan's Revenge. Drake and Josh believe that they killed Megan's hamster and now to deal with her possible ways of revenge. Alright, so I gotta admit this is one of the few instances where the episode got a little better as I watched it. Okay, it's not that good. I'm just gonna say right now this is a relatively low meh episode, but I used to think it's a baddie McFaddy. Mainly because Megan's prank gag is not funny at this point, but I do like how clever they reused the plot line this time. In this episode, it's not really Megan herself that's the conflict, but it's more the guilt and fear of her. I mean, in a way that makes her the conflict, but you get my point. The problem with this episode is that nothing happens. Okay, so yeah, most of the episode are schemes of Drake and Josh trying to escape the dead hamster situation. You know, they're amusing, but it's just not something that should take the majority of the episode. I mean, Megan's not that irritating in this episode, but I still find this episode just really boring and a bit forgettable. There are a total of 2 jokes that I thought were funny. Josh saying there's nothing that happens in Utah, and Drake thinking about his butt being glued to Josh individually or together. It's hard to explain, but yeah, it was funny. Overall, the comedy is alright, but it's not up to standard as usual. Also, I will admit that the twist at the end is a little bit clever, but honestly, the way that the hamster fell to the ground really did give the impression that it died from the camera flash, so to be honest, I wouldn't have been surprised if they actually killed the thing. Overall, it's not a good episode, but you could do much worse. Episode 51, Steered Straight. Drake and Josh come across some criminals as they experience what it feels like to be arrested. Alright, so firstly, funnily enough, like Pilot, this is another episode that kind of freaked me out when I was young. It's mainly the one scene where Drake was tearing apart Josh's fake limbs. I was so freaked out when I was young, and the worst part is that when I first watched the episode, I came around that part since I didn't see the first half, so I had no idea the limbs were fake. It freaked me out, man. But years, possibly a decade later, I watched the episode and I really like it. Yeah, it's a good episode. In terms of satire, this episode delivers on the goods. Walter being in the dress is pretty funny, and also him being trapped in the closet is pretty funny. Also, the Jefferson Steel Flex and Alvin Yakatore fake IDs were hilarious. I think most of the comedy here is just visual humor, which is not a bad thing at all, really, but it's kind of hard to analyze it. In terms of plot, this episode is pretty good. It has a slow but steady progression, and I like it. Still on the topic of Pilot, though, like I said in the fun fact part, in the beginning of this episode, Josh is laying on the couch on his laptop when that episode, he couldn't sleep on it because he had lumbar problems. I'm guessing it's because of the weight loss, but it's whatever. But overall, it's a pretty good episode. Episode 52, Megan's First Kiss. Drake and Josh spy on Megan when she gets her first boyfriend. Okay, off the bat, no, Megan actually doesn't kiss her boyfriend, so the title is a little bit misleading. But besides that, this episode is really good. In fact, I can't really think of a flaw with this episode, to be honest. I love the pep la dole do gag that Drake makes when he and Josh are in costumes trying to spy on Megan. Though on one note, this may be the only episode where Helen is actually mad at Drake. About time. But anyway, there are other good jokes here too, but what I really enjoyed in this episode is probably Megan. Not gonna lie, it seems that season 4 was aware of the running gag of Megan manipulating and doing dumb pranks. It seemed that she didn't do as much this season. If anything, she seems more mature, and I really like it. I really do. Granted, the plot itself isn't anything new. Of course, it's one of those plots where a guy is dating 2 girls at the same time. But even though the plot isn't new, I love this episode. There's nothing really wrong with it, like I've said. It's just a really enjoyable episode. Episode 53, Battle of Panthatar, or Panthatar, however pronounce it. Drake and Josh have to try to get a record back after they are invited to a Sweet 16. Okay, so basically these two were invited to this party, but since Drake was being the usual, he makes out with some girl who happens to be this one dude's girlfriend, and it's hard to explain, but yeah. Alright, so this episode is... Okay, I will admit this is a good episode, but I wouldn't say it's superbly written or remarkable, to be honest. Firstly, the story is really, really sloppy in the first half, and the overall episode does not start off good at all. Okay, I get that Drake was wrong for making out with Thornton's girlfriend, but Drake had no idea she was his girlfriend in the first place, and they point this out, but the guy just gets mad. I'm flustered that I can't even finish a sentence. Granted, they do break up, but even still, it just bothers me. The next thing is that even though Thornton got Drake out of the waiting list for a stupid but actual reason, he just uninvites Josh for no real reason, really. Yeah, you just say if he took Drake, he would take Josh, but Josh didn't do anything wrong, so I don't get why Thornton took him off the list. The next thing is when Drake and Josh give the guy the Beatles album, and Thornton just doesn't let them in still. Yeah, you can tell this guy is not likable in the slightest. So with all this, you expect a meh or a bad episode. Well, I think the second half is really good. Yes, they do get the record back, thank God, but there's some really cool satire here, such as the really funny Red Sky Not battle sequence of Drake and Josh, the guy literally led Megan in and not the guys. I hate what it means in the context of the story, but I will admit it is a little funny. Either way, this episode does have a really good second half, but the first half is not that good. Episode 54, Really Big Shrimp. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do something different. In a future video, I will cover all 3 Drake and Josh TV movies, which include Drake and Josh Go to Hollywood, This, and Merry Christmas. But just for the statistics sake of this season, I'll have a brief analysis. I'm going to cover more, obviously, on the future video, but I'm just going to make it quick for statistics sake of the season. I will just get out of the way. This episode is pretty good, and like I said, this is third time. I'm going to get even more in depth with the future video. In terms of comedy and story, this is pretty good, and if there's one standout joke, it's probably the ending where they have the callback to the Amanda show with the little shrimp on the ground, the two fighting over it. But yeah, it's a good episode. Episode 55, Helicopter. Drake and Josh get to ride a helicopter. However, due to some misfortune, they have to skydive while the thing is in autopilot. Alright, so firstly, I shall say that, yes, this episode is reused in a very bad episode. Trip steals the jet and Game Shakers. So already knock off for that episode, and spoiler warning for that episode. But either way, I find this episode to be pretty good. My favorite part is when Josh realized Drake left to jump out of the helicopter and try to sell it as Tim and Drake go into the water park to the mom. You have to see it to see where I'm coming from, but yeah, it's pretty funny. The plot of this episode, however, is a little bit lacking. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but yes, it's one of those episodes where they're just in one place for most of the time and not that much happens. Okay, it's not nearly to the extent as the other episodes, but it still does happen for a decent amount of time. In terms of comedy, this episode does deliver on the goods, but it's not insanely funny though. But still, I find it a pretty good episode. Episode 56, Dance Contest. Drake and Josh enter a dance contest, but they both have to face off against each other with a girl. Alright, well, I gotta say that even though Really Big Shrimp was a true series finale, I gotta say that as the aired series finale, I think this episode still fits. I mean, most of it does feel like a typical episode, but I won't lie. The dance routine at the end does have a sense of finality to it, and I like it. However, is the episode overall a good series finale? Heck yes it is. Good episode to end off, which is very cool. In fact, I can't really think of anything really wrong with this episode. Judging by how Dan getting the Dan Schneider, writing practices are a little bit repetitive, admittedly. It is a little bit predictable that the girls Drake and Josh were hooked up with were going to have some problems, and at the end, it all backfired. But to be fair, I didn't really expect Drake and Josh themselves to dance together. There are two other minor things that do bother me. First of all, it is very, very stupid that there's an episode that has the exact same name that's aired on the exact same day for Zoe 101. By the way, in case you're wondering, no, I'm not reviewing Zoe 101. I've seen a decent amount of episodes, but I really don't have true memories of Zoe 101. I barely remember most of it. I remember the characters, the premise, and whatnot, but I'm not reviewing it. Anyway, another thing, and just like Mean Teacher, this part is kind of affected by the later stuff. Well, it means that Jeremy Riley, the guy who plays Luber in iCarly, I think he was even on the Amanda show, and also plays that one weird guy from Poison Pie, from Garbage Shakers, Game Shakers. Ugh, come on. Guest stars in this episode. Granted, he's just one of the executives of the contest, but I'm just going to say this right now, I'll say it again later. Reusing your actors does not make you look good. Even though it's a bit lazy, I can get down with an actor from a previous show starring in the new show, kind of like how Miranda Cosgrove went from Megan in this show to Carly and iCarly, and how Victoria Justice went from Lola from Zoe 101 to Tori from Victorious. However, when you just keep using one-offs, then it's just so lame. There's nothing else to really point in this episode. It's just a really good episode, really. And not only is this every episode of Drake and Josh Season 4 reviewed, but this is every episode of Drake and Josh as a whole reviewed. Let's get down to the stats. There were 19 episodes, 14 good episodes, 4 meh episodes, and 2 bad episodes. So how do I feel about Drake and Josh Season 4 as a whole? Well, if you couldn't tell by the stats and how I reviewed them, this is a very good season. In fact, I can't really decide which is better, Season 2 or Season 4. Statistically, Season 2 is the best, but I don't know, I gotta laugh out of every episode at the very least of Season 4. It really seems that it takes the best episodes of Season 3 and not only makes more of those, but just trims the fat a bit. So since I only have 2 bad episodes, I'll say the worst episode is probably the Great Doheny, since it just fails in terms of writing and just common sense. And then Josh Runs Into Oprah is right after. Both are really bad episodes, but nothing can get as bad as Peruvian Puff Pepper or even Theater Thug. So let's get down with the top 5. Number 5, Steered Straight. Number 4, My Dinner with Bobo. Number 3, Megan's First Kiss. Number 2, Vicious Tiberius. And number 1, Josh is Done. Alright guys, that was it for Drake and Josh. Movies aside anyway. Now it's time to get to iCarly. You know, with these longer seasons, I do get drained from this. Hopefully season 1 of iCarly doesn't have that many episodes. 25? This season had 19, I got sick of it. Ugh, motherfucker.